continue to increase over time due to inflation that is required as you advance the project. But I do want to also emphasize that the cost estimates, especially for the LRT, does not include the need to construct a new vehicle maintenance facility. This is another key improvement that will be required in order to maintain and service the vehicles. Given these factors, the increase of the LRT costs could reach as much as $500 million. So just want to be very clear on that. Also, related to project delivery, it's important to understand further the impacts that delivering LRT would be, based on this 8 to 10 year estimate. This estimate includes and assumes requirement of securing federal funds to match the local funds that are being dedicated from the Moore-Marta Atlanta half-penny sales tax. So to balance the much higher cost for the LRT compared to the BRT, as well as competing for federal funds with other transit projects throughout the country, makes it even more difficult for the LRT to be positioned to receive federal funding. And relying solely on local funding to pay for the entire project will increase the likelihood for the LRT project to take much longer, well beyond the 10-year estimate. So after reviewing the result of the alternatives analysis and input received, MARTA decided to take a step back and identify the best design elements and performance of each alternative. MARTA's goal is to recommend advancing a high quality transit project that fully addresses the mobility needs of the Campbellton corridor, with an emphasis on constructing and delivering our project sooner. So the next slide, what we want to do is provide you all with our recommended alternative. Which this is our recommended alternative. We're very pleased and excited to present to you this evening is the center running BRT. Now, this new alternative combines the community's preferences that we heard related to flexibility and quicker delivery that was provided for the curb running BRT, but also incorporates the center running design elements that we heard feedback about from the LRT alternative. The center running BRT provides more fully dedicated transit lanes along the majority of the corridor, with less impacts to the surrounding land uses compared to the LRT alternative. The center running BRT alternative provides a superior project that can be delivered much quicker at a lower cost to implement compared to LRT. And the center running BRT will provide improved travel time and reliability, wider sidewalks, increased access and safety along the corridor, and premium design features, delivering a gold standard BRT system. So with that, we have included a quick video clip to visually display an example of center running BRT. And the project is called The Pulse, which is a recently opened project in Richmond, Virginia. So with that, let's take a look at the video clip.
It's a new type of service for the Richmond area. It's high quality, high capacity, rapid transit service. We are still using buses, so rubber tires, absolutely, but we use a lot of the same design features like a light rail or a subway would that makes us faster, makes us more reliable, and we're able to provide more frequent service.
Awesome. And what would you say makes it different than just your regular bus service?
Well, there are a number of key design and technology features that make the Pulse totally different from anything else that we operate. And we're standing on one of those things that makes it different. It's the platform. So you're able to have platform level boarding where it's very easy to get on and off the bus through both the front and the back doors. That means as well that the operator is able to dock seamlessly and then keep on moving after everyone gets on and off. There's something else that's missing from the bus itself, and it's a fare box. So you're going to pay for your bus fare before you ever get on, and that happens right here at the platform at the ticket vending machine. We still accept cash coin, we'll issue change, and we will accept credit and debit.
So as you all can see from the video, the Pulse provides premium BRT center running design features and operations similar to what we're proposing for the Campbellton Road corridor. It includes center running transit lanes, transit signal priority, and enhanced station amenities with real-time arrival information and pre-board ticketing. So with that, I would like to hand it off to Tim Casa, the consultant team project manager, to discuss the benefits and features of the proposed center running BRT for Campbellton. He'll also walk through the performance metrics and present a vision of these improvements along Campbellton corridor.
Thank you, Marcus, and good evening, everyone. I'm like Marcus said, I'm Tim Casa. I'm the consultant for the project to MARTA. I want to take a moment to go over at least 5 benefits of the center running BRT. Marcus touched on a few of them. I'll spend a little time to hammer out these 5. First one is safer through the conversion of driveways to right in and right out. It helps alleviate conflicts between the BRT service and auto travel. Number 2 is faster. It's 18 minutes travel time. It's 35% faster than the current Route 83. Moving on to mobility choices. This is something that we heard from the start when we kicked off in September 2019. The desire and need for expanded sidewalks and making it sure that they're on both sides of the roadway. In a later slide, I'll be giving you some renderings to show you how that looks in terms of along the corridor. So the mobility choices that this BRT, center running BRT provides is quite significant. The design of the corridor, a center running BRT is a premium transit project. It's very similar to LRT. And on the next slide, I will get to an example why that's important in terms of how the benefits of a BRT are very comparable to an LRT. Last but not least, the BRT can be delivered 3 years sooner than the LRT option. So there's some benefits. We can go up to the next slide. I can get into a little bit more detail as far as how all of the 3 transit alternatives compare to one another, or how, not necessarily compare to one another, but how they perform on these key performance metrics. I want to take a minute to recap. The alternatives analysis analyzed a center running BRT, which that is the column with the yellow header, and a BRT curb running. And lastly, an LRT center running. And as you can see, the vehicles, if you look at that icon, the transit vehicles for BRT center running are in the middle of the road with the travel lanes on the outer edges. With the curb running BRT, the transit vehicle is on the outside. That's what we call it, curb, with the travel lanes in the middle. LRT center running, the transit vehicles are in the middle. What you will see is what we call the Harvey balls, the solid circles, semicircles, and empty circles. A solid circle demonstrates high performance. A semicircle represents a moderate performance, and empty circle represents a lower performance. So when we look at how all the 3 transit alternatives perform when it comes to travel characteristics, the travel time, as you can see, all the 3 transit alternatives, they do a good job, very effective, with LRT center running 16 minutes and BRT center running 18 minutes. That's again if you can see to your left, the current travel time on the Route 83 is 28 minutes. So you're saving some significant minutes in terms of travel time in a one-way direction. Forecasted daily riders, with the tool we use on this analysis, we're estimating up to 6,000 riders a day. I will say the forecasted daily riders, and a few other metrics. These numbers are going to be refined as the project continues in project development, but that's what we're estimating at this time. Changes to the corridor, that is the middle portion of this table. Changes to the corridor could be viewed as benefits as well as impacts. Whenever you're implementing an LRT in a corridor such as Campbellton, you're practically bringing in a partial streetcar. And with that, you're going to bring some challenges from an operational standpoint and as well as design impacts. But the first one I want to talk about is the percentage of dedicated lanes. Now, dedicated lanes is important because it's tied to travel time. If you have a dedicated lane, an exclusive transit way for the transit vehicle, it allows that vehicle to make on-time performance, and it alleviates, it helps mitigate congestion. BRT, the center running BRT scores the highest with 92% of the corridor being in dedicated lanes. The curb running BRT as well as the center running LRT are both at 70%. All of that is good. It's still significant improvement, but just in terms of how they relate to one another, the center running BRT is the higher performer. As you kind of just go down the table, you will see that the BRT center running is pretty much the top performer with respect to these metrics. The pedestrian bike facilities, all of the transit alternatives will provide a significant increase in provision of bike ped facilities, especially when it comes to sidewalks. Both of your BRT alternatives, center running and curb running, perform higher with respect to the miles of sidewalks. When it comes to bike lanes, all three provide some bike lanes with curb running providing the least amount, but the BRT center running and LRT center running, they both provide very significant mileage of bike lanes. When it comes down to reduction of speeding, that's what's our next metric. That's important with respect to auto travel. With Campbellton Road being identified as a corridor for safety improvement, this is important, whereas if you can reduce the speed of autos, it is related to the overall improvement in safety along the corridor. Both the center running BRT as well as the LRT alternatives do a significant job when it comes to reducing that auto travel. Lastly, as far as changes to corridor, number of driveway closures. Center running BRT performs the best in this respect with 0 driveway closures. With the LRT counterpart, it closes 12. That's not bad, especially for a partial streetcar with respect to how each performs on this particular metric. Those are the results. With the curb running BRT, however, it has up to 21 driveway closures, and that's naturally understandable because the transit vehicles on the curb. So to alleviate those conflicts with auto and the bus, you will have a higher number of driveway closures. When we get down to resources required, construction cost, Mark has touched on this previously in the slide. Your BRT alternatives are lower in cost with respect in relationship to the LRT alternative, with the center running BRT being 130 million and the BRT curb being 100 million and LRT costing 340. I want to pause there that 340 million for the LRT, it does not include the cost of the vehicle storage maintenance facility, as Marcus pointed out earlier. Just for your reference, if we were to include the cost of the vehicle storage maintenance facility, it would be a cost north of 35 million. So you basically be at 375 million, including the vehicle storage maintenance facility. This is important for a number of reasons. First, for the community's investment, getting the return of investment for the local dollar, but also when it comes to competing with other projects in the FTA region. FTA stands for Federal Transit Administration. So those costs, as well as that previous metric of forecasted daily riders as well as cost per rider. Those are important metrics that the FTA uses to pretty much how a project competes with other projects across the nation. Operating costs, both BRT alternatives are lower in cost with respect to the LRT. When you get to the year of operation, this is just a recap of Marcus touched on earlier. We're looking at 2028 for the BRT alternatives and for LRT 2031. I would like to pause here for the moment that at the time that the year of operation was forecasted for the BRT, we were assuming if BRT was the mode that it would be 100% local funded. With LRT, it was always envisioned that it would be split funded with federal dollars and local dollars. When you add in the federal contributions and the funding and the federal process, it can add time to the delivery. So I just want to caution everyone, when we look at these dates, they have certain assumptions embedded in them. We also know Biden and Congress passed the infrastructure bill. We're waiting on Congress to do the appropriations. And there's opportunities now that it's exciting that MARTA wants to take advantage of. So I just want to caution everyone that those dates, they're making certain assumptions with respect to federal dollars or local dollars. Last but not least, cost per rider. I want to make sure that everyone understands this is not representing how much it costs the fare to ride the service. These costs represent the cost to MARTA to operate. So this is important too, because this talks about how solvent is this corridor, what's the cost per rider, and with respect to other projects that may have a lower cost per rider. But both BRT alternatives have a lower cost per rider with respect to, in comparison to the LRT alternatives. I want to pause here also just to say with respect to BRT compared to LRT, both are high capacity transit alternatives. With BRT, you're able to get comparable benefits and provisions that the LRT alternative provides, however, at a lower cost. So that's very important for FTA, that if you can get the same amount of benefits at a lower cost, that helps improve that project's chances for federal dollars. So that gives you an overview over the performance metrics with respect to how the alternatives rate in each performance measure. We can advance the slide. So this is the proposed corridor, and with the respective stations, we're proposing 9 stations. As you see to the left, where you see neighborhood residential, neighborhood activity center, and so forth, those are the station typologies. But that's important because the design of that station, we're going to make sure that it blends in with the community. For instance, if you look at Oakland City, it is tapped to be a regional activity center. Take a residential, neighborhood residential, that will be Willis Mill. So the key point there is making sure that the design of the corridor at that segment blends in with the community and very continuous, if you will. But that's the corridor starting at Oakland City to your far right to the east, ending at Ben Hill, the Barge Road parking ride. We can advance to the next slide. On second thought, let's go back to the previous slide. I want to share something about the Fort Mac. What's exciting there is the proposed Fort Mac master plan with the proposed TD Jakes development. MARTA and the TD Jakes developer are already coordinating and at the table, seeking ways of how the project and the development could collaborate better and provide better connecting provisions with the community. So it's very exciting to see the opportunities that could come from that. So we can advance the slide. So these next few slides are for the purpose of giving you a visual of what the proposed BRT, center running BRT, can look like and how it will operate. This first one is what I call a cartoon map. And this is taking what we call segment 6 from Fort Valley Drive to Willis Mill Road. If you look at the top, that's how it looks today, current day. And this is what we call roadway geometry, or the typical section. You have your 2 travel lanes in both directions. You have your sidewalks on both of the sides of the street and your curb and gutter. If you go down to the bottom, where it's the proposed section, this is how it could look with the center running BRT. And what I want you to take note of is look how much wider the sidewalks are in the proposed section compared to the existing section. These are some of the benefits that I had pointed out earlier that the center running BRT are going to provide. Wider sidewalks, you have bike lanes on both sides of the roadway. Your BRT transit vehicles are in the center of the roadway, and your travel lanes are on the outside. Now let's go over advance to the next slide, where we can give you an actual rendering of how it will look with the proposed BRT service in the community. Now, these pictures are simply that. They just give you a hypothetical how it will look. We try to blend in the actual photos from the corridor mixed with what it could look like. So I want to draw your attention to that sidewalk at the bottom left, where the gentleman is facing us with his bag. The widest sidewalks, you have your bike lane, that's in the green paved area. Your burgundy lanes in the middle, that's the area where the transit vehicles will travel. And as again, sidewalks on both sides of the street. Lastly, look at the station in the middle. Station's in the middle of the roadway. If you look off to the backdrop, that's a crosswalk. So one could get from the sidewalk over to the station, where the bus will pick up would-be riders to carry them to the next destination. Like I said, the next couple of slides just gives you another vantage point of how it can look. So we can advance the slide, give it from another view. This is just like I call an aerial view of how the corridor could look. You see your buses are in the middle of the roadway. You see your bike lanes on both sides of the street and your wider sidewalks. We can advance. And I want to say that all these boards will be on the virtual meeting room, where you can kind of look at it at your own pace, zoom in, if you will, to get a better feel. But this, again, just gives you a taste of how it could look with the BRT service in the corridor. In this picture, you see the bike lane, the blue car is in the travel lane with the buses in the middle, and the wider sidewalks to your right. So those are, again, to give you renderings of visual how the BRT service could look in the actual corridor. We can advance the slide, please. So project timeline, where we are now is wrapping up the alternative analysis. As you can see to the left of that, those are the activities we've done to date. Currently, we're at the place of encroaching upon the LPA, what we call the locally preferred alternative. We are anticipating a decision point by the MARTA board in March next month. What's important to note on this slide is once the LPA is adopted, that's when the next stage of project activities can begin. The environmental studies, the final design, and ultimately the construction. Again, with that scenario, we were assuming that we can open service in 2028. We can advance the slide. So I appreciate everybody's attention and time allowing me to walk you through the slides. I would like to turn it over to Ms. Erica Pines.
Okay, thank you everyone for putting your questions in the Q&A section of your Zoom. I see that we're having a lively discussion in the chat. The questions, we're gonna pull from the Q&A so that we don't get confused about what's the question and what's the comment, but thank you all for being here. We just wanna let you know that stakeholder engagement was conducted with City Council and committees in January and February of this year. We're going to present a draft local preferred alternative and preferred station area plans to the public. That's what we're doing now. So we have this meeting tonight, and we also have another meeting on Saturday. And From there, we would go to the board to adopt the LPA in March, in next month in March, following a committee hearing in February. If the board adopts the LPA, we want to begin preliminary engineering this spring, and we hope to develop strategies to implement the preferred station area plans in this summer. We invite you to visit our virtual meeting room. If someone could drop that in the chat so that people could copy that. We want you to go to our virtual meeting room. We're going to keep that meeting room up for a couple of weeks because we want continued engagement and feedback from the public on this project. We want you to email questions directly to Marcus Arnold at marnold-vhb@itsmarter.com, or public hearing, send an email to publichearinginfo@itsmarter.com. Remember, if you have a customer service question, please direct those to customer service so that we can respond to those as soon as possible, because we know that the current service is running now and we don't want any lag in time for those questions to be responded to. We ask that you share the news with your friends and neighbors. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or on our YouTube channel. And with that, I'm going to bring Tim Costa back up and he can start going through the Q&A session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Erica. Again, I would like to reiterate that the questions not related to the project, we're going to again go to the customer service where your question can get answered there. I'm only going to read the question that's project related. So the first question says, hello, MARTA engaged with the public a few years back and the community requested a light rail as the preferred alternative. Why did you deviate away from what the public requested? So we can tag team. I can answer this question along with Marcus Arnold. The plan had always been that it was programmed as an LRT, but also with the caveat that an alternatives analysis will be underway to determine the ideal mode, the preferred mode for the corridor. So that just gives you some clarification in terms of a history recap. But the alternatives analysis was always embedded in the assumption that at a certain point, it will be determined, would it be LRT or BRT? Mark, is there anything you want to add to that?
Tim, I think that's a good explanation. Like you said, we've been conducting this study since the fall of 2019. Understanding that they're comparing the two modes and really understanding the trade-offs based on that analysis, but also to all the input that we received over this period. And we've been out to the community and engaging folks throughout the process, and definitely wanted to just reiterate that this has been part of the process. This is the first time we're presenting a recommended preferred alternative.
Thank you, Marcus. The next question, will MARTA be working with the city to proactively rezone parcels along the corridor for higher density and mixed use and to fill sidewalk gaps, which are necessary to support transit? I'm going to call upon Winston Mitchell to answer this question.
Yeah, I think it's actually John Tully is today for that.
Okay. Yeah, that works. Thank you. John, I'm going to have you answer this question for us, please.
Yeah. Hey, Tim, and apologies. Had some audio problems. You mind repeating the question for me?
Sure. Will MARTA be working with the city to proactively rezone parcels along the corridor for higher density and mixed use and to fill sidewalk gaps, which are all necessary to support transit?
Yeah, that's a great question. So obviously the focus of this is really the transit line itself, the vehicle and the alignment in the stations, but an important part of implementing a successful project are those other things like development, like zoning, like sidewalks. And so absolutely MARTA has been working with the City of Atlanta to identify, any gaps that may be located there and where they could partner. Zoning is controlled by the City of Atlanta. MARTA doesn't control zoning in the area, and so that'll be under the authority of the City of Atlanta. But as part of this project, what we're trying to do is identify some of those potential locations where transit supported development could occur close to the BRT stops, close to the BRT stations. And so those recommendations will be part of this process as well. We didn't really get into it tonight, but that'll be part of the outcome of the overall project, is to identify those key locations where additional zoning, additional density could be introduced.
Thank you, John. The next question is, can we call the line the BERT? It seems like a fun name for BRT. I'm going to turn that fun question over to Marcus.
All right, thanks, Tim, and thanks for that suggestion. One thing we wanted to want to mention too is that part of this project, as we continue to advance it, we will be engaging our marketing department. As you're aware, as we continue to advance our expansion projects, we do want to look at branding and naming of it, and definitely want to include public and stakeholders in that process too. So thank you again, and we'll continue to look and work at identifying potential names as the project advances.
Thank you, Marcus. I think the next question I'll also toss to you, so stay close to the mic. Is tonight's forum an official public open house that will be included in the environmental NEPA document, or is tonight only for informational purposes?
So tonight is a public meeting. You know, obviously we're virtual, but as the project continues to advance, we will be doing some environmental studies on the project, and as part of that, there will be additional engagement. So I want to emphasize, you know, we'll continue to be coming back out to you all in the public as we continue to advance at these key milestones, which will include once we're at a point to do some environmental studies for the corridor.
Thank you, Marcus. Next question: how was the Moore-Marta planned connection to Beltline LRT taken into account with this corridor study? I'm going to call on Paul Patterson.
Oh, get my video up. Thanks, Tim. Yeah, well, the connection is Oakland City, and the planning of the Campbellton corridor is well in advance of the Southwest corridor of the Beltline rail. So it's hard to say where they're going to connect or how they're going to connect. Previous planning had it connecting at Oakland City, so all things connect to Oakland City, and the intent is the more regional system that would be the connection. So,
okay, thank you, Paul. Paul, I think the next one is for you too. We're talking about Beltline connections. What is the plan now to connect Campbellton corridor to the Beltline, and what impact does the forced transfer have? Let me know if you need me to repeat that question, Paul.
No, I mean, I can see it too.
Okay.
I mean, again, in terms of the effect of the ridership, I think somebody else might have to speak to that. The physical connection is kind of like I was saying before. I mean, it is all right now, all lines converge on Oakland City. We have more details on Campbellton than we do on the Beltline, so it's hard to answer that in too much detail. So I'm gonna have to punt on the ridership question though.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. We got one more question before we get to the ridership, but we'll tackle that. The next question is, would BRT improvements include improvements to the existing bus hubs at Oakland City MARTA Station? I'm going to call on Chris Hansel.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. You know, I'll talk about Oakland City, but also talk about the other terminus at Barge Road as well. And the project currently envisions related improvements, dedicated platforms for the BRT service adjacent to the other local service and other features, other modes within MARTA. And so, yes, there will be direct adjacent connections and facilities dedicated to the BRT project that will facilitate the transfer activity that is likely to occur at those facilities.
Okay, thank you, Chris. The next question is, does the estimated ridership take the connections to the Beltline into account? Something which BRT can't do. I will speak to this question as far as the ridership. The ridership tool that was used to calculate forecasted riders was the activity-based model, ARCs. There is an effort underway currently where we're going to switch to stops and is more applicable to transit projects. But to answer your question, the ABM it's a regional model, so it takes into account other projects that are adjacent to other projects. So there is an account for other projects ridership, if you will, in the mix. So hopefully that answers your question. Next question, how much of the costs are tied up in the sidewalk bike facilities that could potentially be handled by the city of Atlanta rather than MARTA? This is a two-part question. I'll toss it to Chris and Paul, either one of you, and then I can speak to how it's handled by the city of Atlanta and MARTA.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I can speak to the costs. I assume we're talking about the, I'll use the LRT option, but roughly of the 340 million, about 2 million of that is in bike facilities, so bike racks and painted bike lanes, and then roughly 5 million is associated with concrete sidewalks and ramps.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the part about handled by the city versus Atlanta, I just want to remind everybody that the MARTA sales tax is the city of Atlanta tax, half penny, confined to the city of Atlanta. That's managed by MARTA. So it's a joint program. I will defer to Marcus if you want to add any more to that aspect of the city versus MARTA dynamic when it comes to cost.
I think to your point, Tim, like I said, the city is a partner in in this project as well as the MARTA Atlanta program, and we continue to coordinate and work with the city as relates to infrastructure along their right of way. So we'll continue to keep them plugged in on things and coordinate on those improvements as we get to that stage of the project.
Thank you, Marcus. Next question is, how does Center BRT not close driveways, but LRT does? I'm going to go to Chris Hansel first, and then I'll hand it over to Paul Patterson, who can speak to the LRT option.
Great question. We've made some estimations as part of this original alternatives process. I think the takeaway is understandable. I'll let Paul talk a little bit more about the LRT, but the reality is either one of those options, running high capacity transit through the center of a roadway corridor, really diminishes the impact of driveways. In fact, for the center running BRT, we didn't anticipate closing any specific driveways. Now, obviously, as you get further into engineering, there may be some reasons to reevaluate that if it's causing concerns from a safety perspective, as well as maybe an intersection operation standpoint. But for the alternative that we looked at now, we chose to accommodate all the existing driveways that occurred along the corridor in favor of retaining that access as opposed to impacting it. Paul, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the 12 driveways that I believe your alternative on the LRT were impacted?
Sure, and it does get down into the nitty gritty, but but what it really kind of boils down to globally is light rail is just a little bit wider. The envelope for light rail is just a little bit wider, and there's in an urban corridor where there's a lot of commercial, like right up to the back of sidewalk, a lot, a few feet here or there can make a big difference, and I think that going back and reviewing all the driveway closures while I was looking at the question, and that is the case. It's sort of you cross the threshold and it just created a situation where you just couldn't keep a driveway open because it was just that much wider.
Thank you, Paul. Next question, did you talk to adjacent property owners like Greenbrier Mall, for example, to donate underused land for a VMF because they would otherwise gain property benefits. I can speak to this, and I'll defer to you, Paul, if I missed anything. But we did talk to Greenbrier Mall as well as other stakeholders, Fort Mac, Invest in Atlanta, just to name a few, and some would-be developers that have active projects or planned projects in the corridor. Greenbrier Mall was approached with respect to the station that's proposed at the Greenbrier stop. We are not at that point in the project to discuss right-of-way purchase or donations, et cetera, et cetera. That could be an aspect that can be visited down the road as the project's further along. But hopefully I answered that question in terms of the donation part.
Yeah, that's really tricky, especially before we get into the NEPA part of the project. I mean, we have some good candidate sites, and actually one of them was at Greenbrier Mall. But as we were working through the project, there was a project that came out of the ground that sort of took that off the table. So I mean, we have some 3 viable options that sort of, if it went forward, you know, we would work through in the NEPA process.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. The next question is, did MARTA's TOD office do any work to offset costs, and was any analysis done on the comparative TOD potential between BRT and LRT? The first part of the question, as far as TOD's office doing any work to offset costs, again, that's similar to what we addressed in the previous question. We're not at that point yet in terms of land values, donations, purchases, and what have you. That could be something that will be visited down the road as the project develops. In terms of, let's see, a comparative TOD potential between BRT and LRT. Yes, we did an assessment on there, pretty much a white paper with respect to the comparisons across the nation of what happens to the associated land use with the BRT project and the LRT project. So the key takeaway was it's still early. It's something that the industry is studying to understand the different effects of both modes. Okay. Let's see, get to the next question. Okay. Next question is, if you're already having discussions with TD Jakes, that sounds like a potentially massive violation of NEPA process, as it would be predetermining the alternative, right-of-way discussion cannot proceed prior to alternative selection. What's the extent of discussions with TD Jakes to date? I can answer part of this, and I'll toss it over to John Tully. At this point, we're early in the conversations about where potential locations of their development with respect to the transit line. So we haven't talked about any type of right-of-way impacts, acquisition or whatnot. This is really at the conceptual level, high level, discussing how the 2 projects can collaborate. John, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, just briefly, I mean, the location there at the back gate, the former back gate of Fort Mac, really presents a great opportunity for, again, transit-oriented development. And I think some of what we wanted to do was make sure we weren't starting to think about where some of that could occur that might run counter to what TD Jake's team was starting to think about, or see if there are any potential opportunities for synergy. Maybe they were considering sidewalk or bike ped connections or park space or other things. We wanted to kind of make sure that we were sharing with them what we've been hearing from the community, sharing what we'd found so far, and then trying to see if there were opportunities to really coordinate on station location, how that might impact TOD and other opportunities there. So pretty much high level conversations at this point, as they're still working through their plans. They don't have anything real definitive yet. So what they're willing to share, though, we wanted to kind of share what the project was as well.
Okay, thank you, John. Next question, will the money saved by choosing the BRT option allow for investments in additional services in the area? I'm going to hand this question over to Marcus.
Well, I think one of the pieces that we're starting to look at and wanting to look further in is really which ties into some of the TOD questions and development is what are some opportunities for investment that comes from implementing this type of premium service, premium transit service. So we've already started to do some analysis and understanding some of the benefits and investment, both direct and indirect, that comes from implementation of these transit projects. And so we'll continue to identify means and ways to determine in the Campbellton corridor what are some opportunities for additional investment, not only within the project, but from folks who are looking to continue to develop and connect to the station areas as well. So we'll continue that process to identify that.
Okay, thank you, Marcus. I see. I come across a question that's Emory, question regarding Emory and Beltline, which I'm assuming is Clifton. So we definitely encourage you to send your questions to the email for other projects not related to the project. There's a question. Why isn't general manager at the meeting? Erica Pines, I can answer that, but I'm gonna defer to you in the best way you want to address that question. Why isn't general manager at the meeting?
The general manager will attend the meetings as the schedule permits. It's not a diss or anything that the general manager is not here. During these type meetings, we typically don't have the general manager in attendance at these meetings. However, we do give a meeting report. Every question and every comment that you all are making in the chat and in the Q&A, we do give that report to the general manager and the rest of our leadership team at MARTA so that we can hear your questions and concerns. But it's not typical that the general manager attends these public meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Next question is, will BRT replace existing buses? We have developed a service plan for the corridor to help alleviate any redundancy in services. So there will be still be local bus service that complement the new BRT service. So we're still early in the process. The operations of the BRT service, as well as any impacts to other associated bus routes, that's going to be determined as the project further develops. Next question is, can bike lanes be eliminated? I can answer this question alongside Marcus. I will stress that right now we're at 15% design. Next milestone is 30%. So I don't think MARTA's presenting this as everything's in stone because it's still being developed. I think if that's a comment and a request, I think MARTA would definitely note that as a request in terms of bike lanes. Marcus, anything you want to add on to that?
Not too much more. I think that request is noted, and like Tim said, we are going to continue to refine the design as we move things forward on the project. But understanding that we really are looking for Campbellton to be provide access and greater access, not only for pedestrians, but also those who may want to utilize the service via bicycle as well. So we definitely want to take in as much input on that and continue the conversation. And we've noted that. So thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. Okay. All right. Here's a question, and a hybrid of a comment. So it's both. As it says, isn't the Route 83 Campbellton Road bus the second highest in ridership in the MARTA system? Haven't we earned the right to designate our tax dollars to LRT, the higher price plan that we asked for? And the third part of the question, if LRT is good enough for Emory CDC, why is it not good enough for Campbellton? Marcus, I can tag team with you on this one. I can let you have first dibs and answering the question, but let me know if you need me to repeat any of those questions.
Sure, Tim. Yes, the Route 83 is the second highest ridership route along the corridor, and specifically one reason why we're looking at high capacity, recommended high capacity transit service along Campbellton corridor. So definitely understand the need for faster, more quicker, efficient service above and beyond what's out there today. As far as what is being looked at on other parts of the system, like I said, we are, as MARTA, looking at all the corridors and analyzing different options and opportunities along the corridor. So I definitely want to reiterate, we are treating every project and corridor equally and understanding the specific needs of the local communities along the project. So I don't know, Tim, if you had anything additional to add to that response.
No, I don't, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. Next question. So will the Oakland City Station TOD be revised to have real commercial as a forefront rather than the previous failed RFP townhouses? I'm gonna give this question to John Tully.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. We're actually MARTA TOD staff has been involved in the process, and we were actually just discussing this station area recently. The next phase of the process again is to actually dig into some of these proposed station areas, and Oakland City Station is obviously one of the primary areas that we'll be looking at. And so the thought is to kind of revisit, look at what's already been proposed in the past, what's been proposed and constructed in the area recently, and consider the market study, and really try to figure out how to maximize the site there to support transit ridership and obviously bring additional development and services to the area as well. So the short answer might be yes, but I think we're just at the beginning of that process to kind of really think about what's possible and plausible at that station.
Thank you, John. The next question is, will bus shelters, benches, and route seating be factored in to the project? Chris, is this a project, a question that you can answer? Chris Hansel, I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's part of the overall cost of the project are the stations. And that's really, as you can imagine, that's one of the more prominent features in the corridor besides the mode itself. It's where people access the system, and that's where they get off the system to access the neighborhoods. And so certainly we want to make sure that those reflect the brand of MARTA and reflect the community as well. And those have been incorporated into the project, and something that will be a great opportunity for the public to weigh in and provide additional feedback on what they would like to see at each of those locations along the corridor and future phases of the project.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Next question is again more of a question / comment. But the heart of the question is, will this stop the bus route 162 from coming to Myrtle Drive Southwest? At this time, the proposed service plan that's being developed and is recommended, no changes are being recommended for 162, but I can't stress enough, we're still early in the process. The operations of the BRT service, as well as the associated but local buses that are out here now, that's to be determined. But we looked at a number of bus routes in terms of where there could be efficiencies achieved to avoid redundancy. So hopefully I answered your question. The next question is, what is the safety strategy for this project? So we can kind of hit this on both sides. I'm going to give it to Paul Patterson to speak to the LRT aspect, and then Chris Hansel for BRT.
Okay, thanks. I mean, it's a great question, and it's important that it runs through every aspect of what we look at in both modes. And just suffice it to say, as when we look at these two designs, and we're envisioning them sort of in the state of the art, sort of the state of the practice. What type of service is typically known as light rail or BRT? But then it will specifically be run through a separate safety process to ensure that all the hazards are addressed. And this is truly the safest system that we can roll out. So there's a whole process. Right now, we're just initially laying it out, as a BRT system. As we move forward and once we've selected an alternative, then we'll really dive into the safety process. So.
And I'll just tag on to that too. Paul did a great job of explaining that, yeah, that will be an official plan of official process as the project moves forward. Certainly re-envisioning the Campbellton corridor and integrating additional modes, not only transit, but adding bike lanes, adding additional sidewalks. Those are going to have some considerations to make sure that it's a safe environment for everyone. And so that will be something that as the design evolves, there will be features added to the project and considered to make sure that that is a safe environment for not only passengers of the system, but the rest of the folks along the corridor.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, next question. There's a weird, 1 mile gap along Deal Avenue between this project and the Metropolitan Parkway ART. Any discussions about joining the two? Marcus, can you speak to this?
No, that's a good comment. There isn't anything specifically identified along that stretch as far as new transit improvements, but we do understand, we continue to look at system connectivity, and the key to a lot of the expansion projects are looking at how do they connect into the core system that MARTA currently serves and operates, but also to as we continue to expand the program further into the future, what are some additional key connections? So that's a good comment. Thank you for providing.
Okay, thank you, Marcus. The next one, again, is a question, slash comment. The community participated in these exercises and we wanted light rail. Who persuaded you to steer off course and suggest BRT? Is MARTA ready to accept the responsibility for your actions? It's been proven that LRT is a lower cost long-term alternative. Who convinced you to utilize more MARTA tax dollars for 2 years worth of engagement? And why is it fair to utilize more MARTA taxes to delegate towards other projects in the plan? Marcus, I know it's a packed question, but I'm gonna defer to you.
Can I address that also?
Absolutely. You can go first, ladies first.
Yes, there's a lot of rhetoric that the community chose LRT. Can we go back to the slide on what the community actually chose, please, Melanie? Because if you guys have some proof that we don't have, that the community chose LRT overwhelmingly, please send it to us because we don't have that information. And we went, just so that everyone is aware, we went on the trains, on the buses, to the apartment complexes, to the churches. A lot of people that are in this chat, Sherry Williams, have been at all of our engagements. And when we first started this, there was so much excitement about BRT. There was excitement about BRT throughout all of these discussions. So when you look at this slide, 45% of the people that we talked to preferred BRT and 43% preferred LRT. So you can kind of say it was a tie, but there was no overwhelming community support for LRT over BRT. So if you have some surveys that you conducted that are different than what we have, the project team, like I said, we rode the trains, we knocked on the apartment complexes, we sent mail to people along the corridor, and we spent a lot of time up and down the corridor talking to people. We received paper surveys, handwritten surveys, and we talked to our customers, and it was 45% preferred BRT and 43% preferred LRT. I just want to set the record straight on that because a lot of the comments are saying the community chose LRT. The community was actually split. And what we did was we tried to come up with a project that could satisfy as many of those needs from the participants that we heard in the survey. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Let's see. The next question is more of a general question. like an inquiry, where can we find the More Marta tax ordinance and read through the conditions so we can make sure you are following the conditions of the ordinance?
And
Okay.
that was from Mr. Brian. Brian, if you could email us at publichearinginfo@itsmarta.com, we can get you that information. And I also saw that former Senator Ford, the Honorable, is in the conversation also. I know you said that you requested information about the project. I put my email to you, epines@itsmarta.com. If you can send us the information that you requested, we will get that to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Eric. The next, again, is somewhat of a comment and a question. The Harbin Drive LRT transit stop is currently under siege. Are you in conversation with the city planning to protect and not issue building permits for sites designated as transit stops, so this plan will not lose much needed stops in the corridor where about 80% of residents who do not have access to cars? Thank you for the question. We'll go back to what we had touched on earlier. There's a service plan, recommended service plan for the BRT service, as well as the associated local bus routes. That is still to be determined in terms of the final operation plan. So this is something that I will encourage you and others that have concerns about local bus routes with respect to the new transit service. Continue to communicate with MARTA your concerns and questions. But that's the best what we can give you at this point. We're still early on in the process, and the final operations plan we haven't gotten to that juncture yet. Go keep scrolling through. Okay. Okay, here's a comment. The More Marta list of projects funded continuous light rail from Campbellton corridor along the belt line through downtown, back on the belt line, and then on the Clifton corridor. So now that it's getting chopped up because the corridors are being looked at individually and without a wider context. Marcus, I can take the first part of this and then let you, if you want to address anything else. Again, I want to reiterate that when the More Marta program was getting established, it was programmed as an LRT project, but that was like a placekeeper because MARTA knew it needed to do an alternatives analysis to determine the proper mode for the corridor. So I would say at the time that was programmed, you had to wait to see until the analysis, which we're wrapping up now, to recommend the ultimate actual transit mode for the corridor. Marcus, anything you want to touch on that I didn't cover?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize and reiterate that, we are still looking at this as a system wide of projects and how they will interface and provide efficiencies and connectivity throughout the Atlanta region and the MARTA service area. So just wanted to reiterate, we are not only just looking at individual projects and how those advance, but also to how they interact and operate. So just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Marcus. This last question is, this next question is, where is the last survey MARTA did a year ago in 2021 when we voted 62% for LRT and about 30% for BRT in the virtual meeting? Marcus, this could be referring to what we did in June, where we had a live polling question. So I know the team has prepared a public involvement report in terms of what those questions were and the answers that were given. But I believe that's what this respondent is referring to, that live polling.
And that's correct. And that information, the polling the information was collected at that meeting was one input to the overall survey effort. As you mentioned, we received 938 surveys. So that was just one piece of a bigger puzzle of input that we did receive. So, we're still, happy to have received so much input through the survey effort. I don't know, Eric, if you had anything in addition to that.
Yeah, that's correct. That was one meeting. I think it was like 40 something people in that meeting, which is why we were deliberate about getting on the buses, getting on the trains, canvassing the residents and canvassing the apartment complexes and engaging all of our stakeholders to get the word out to their people. I know sometimes surveys may not be what you want them to be, but that does not mean that they are incorrect. Thanks.
Thank you, Erica. Erica, I've gotten down to the bottom of the Q&A in terms of questions posed.
Okay, and thank you, Tim. Looking at the Q&A, there were some questions that were duplicative. Thank you, Tim, for trying to get to as many as possible. Melanie, if we can go back to that last slide, that would be great. We just want to remind you to send people, if somebody could drop the virtual meeting room in the chat, that would be great. We want to remind you to continue to stay engaged on this project and to also send us questions. We record everything because everything that we do is for the public record. The chat will be recorded into record. The Q&A will be recorded into the record. And we present our findings to our leadership team and to our board of directors. Please stay engaged on this project. Inform people about the meeting on Saturday. Let people know to attend, go into the virtual meeting room so that they can participate there and gain more information. If your question was not answered tonight, please email publichearinginfo@itsmarter.com or marno-bhb@itsmarter.com. And also, if you have a non-project question, this discussion tonight was on the Campbellton Road proposed proposed mode. If you have questions not related to this project, please send those to public hearing info. If it's a service question, if it's something regarding shelters, I think I saw something about shelters under siege or something like that from you, Sherry. Send those to our customer service department and we will make sure that we get those handled. It's very important if you have a service question that we get those to customer service because those are logged and they have a timestamp on them that we have to in turn respond to those. So if you want those situations addressed, please send those to customer service. And I just want to say thank everyone tonight for joining us. We are really excited about this gold standard center running BRT, and we hope that you become excited with us. We think that this is a great project and we look forward to further engagement. Thanks, project team. And with that, good night, everyone. Melanie, let us know once we can go into just a debrief.
All right, everybody is off. Everybody's been removed, so it's just us.
Yep, I see Collins is in the attending. Do you want to boot him up?
I promoted
Okay.
him a couple times.
Okay,
So I guess
gotcha.
he has to accept or something.
Okay,
I'm not sure what, there we go.
okay,
Okay.
good deal. All right,
Chris
Did,
said it's still recording on his end.
I was gonna say, is it still streaming as well?
let's take it off the record, please. And the stream, thanks.